Hi there, my name's Chris Myers. I'm one of the guys in the UK that runs a Sports Medicine Ultrasound Group. I've been meaning to do this blog for quite a few months now. I started reviewing handheld ultrasound machines at the beginning of our first UK national lockdown, because obviously this is a very interesting area where people are making some really big technological advances. And it would appear that certainly the image quality seems to be improving significantly with these handheld options. On our website, we've got lots of blogs, and you can see that I've reviewed the Butterfly in detail, the Lumify, the Clarius, and I've also had a look at some of the other handheld ultrasound machines. Essentially, what we're going to review today is the Clarius version 2 and the Phillips Lumify. The Clarius version 2 came out at the beginning of 2020, I believe. The Lumify has been out for quite a few years now, and I would suggest that these two are the best handheld ultrasound machines currently on the market. They are quite different to one another, and what I'm going to do today is to do a head-to-head, and at the end of it, give you an idea as to what what the advantages and disadvantages are of each machine and how they compare to each other. So let's first of all start with the probes. Now, they are fundamentally two very different machines. And what I mean by that is that the Lumify has a wire, so it's wired in to your tablet or your phone using a micro B USB. So it is wired to your tablet or phone. Whereas the Clarius is completely wireless, so it is a portable wireless handheld ultrasound machine, which is very different. And what you need to decide in where you work is whether or not having a wire or having a purely handheld wireless device is more useful or not for you, and whether or not that's something that you would consider to be important in your decision making. If we start with the Lumify, the one that you would go for is the 4 to 12, the L4 to 12 megahertz, which is very much a high enough frequency for musculoskeletal ultrasound. With the Clarius, they do a few different probes that I'll show you in a minute, but the L15 or the L7 are the ones that I would suggest are the ones you're going to use for musculoskeletal, and those are the ones that they recommend. Probably the L15 is the main one for musculoskeletal ultrasound. The Lumify probe, and I've used it for a good few days now, it is very light. It's probably lighter than your normal ultrasound probe, which isn't a problem. The size of the probe is very much like a normal ultrasound. So as soon as you pick up the Phillips Lumify, it just feels like a normal ultrasound probe, no problems at all. It's nice and light. There are no probe controls, which I did see as a little bit of a negative. Hopefully their second version will have that, because obviously you are using a touch screen, and sometimes if you get quite a lot of gel on your hands, then using the tablet can be a little bit difficult. So having the ability to freeze or save a cine loop from the probe itself can be an advantage, which leads us on to the Clarius version 2. Which does have probe controls. You can just about see the probe controls here. There's 2 probe controls, and you can control that from your tablet, whether it's a freeze on one of those controls, or whether you start and stop recording a cine loop, or whether you save. So you can actually change what you want on those according to what your preference is. And that's very useful, and I would say very important, because it is a wireless probe. So you really don't need to touch the tablet too much at all when you're scanning. Again, so this does have a slightly higher frequency, 15 megahertz compared to the 12 megahertz. We know that frequency is really important with ultrasound, because we want the best image we can. We want the best spatial resolution that we can get. However, 12 megahertz is high enough for musculoskeletal ultrasound. Remember, the 15 only relates to the top part of the ultrasound image. So the fact that the Lumify is 12 and Clarius is 15 wouldn't influence my decision too much. It really is about the image quality, and both of these have got high enough frequencies to produce a good image quality. Now, as you can clearly see, the Clarius probe is much bigger than a standard ultrasound probe. If anybody saw the Clarius version 1, it was a lot heavier, a lot clunkier, but there is no doubt that the Clarius probe is much bigger than a standard ultrasound probe. And also, there is no doubt that it takes a little bit of getting used to. I used the Clarius, and at the beginning, my hands started to get a little bit tired, but overall, I did pick up the use of it quite quickly. Obviously, I do have reasonable ultrasound probes. Probe skills. I've been scanning for sort of nearly 12 years now, so I was able to adapt quite quickly to it. And that surprised me, actually, because I thought it would take a little bit longer. Now, what you do need to remember is that if you're a sonographer, or if you're going to be doing musculoskeletal ultrasound lists, so back-to-back scanning, then I would suggest that the Clarius is not going to be for you. But if you're like me, a physiotherapist, a sports doctor, or somebody working in another MSK sort of environment, you're probably not going to scan continuously on every patient, and therefore this works quite well, and certainly it doesn't become too heavy when you're ad hoc scanning, as I would say. Now, the reason the probe is much bigger is because within this is basically your whole ultrasound. And there's two important parts. One is you've got all of the processing within there, but also you've got the battery. So the main reason, and this top part here is the battery, one of the main reasons it is heavier and slightly and bigger than a standard ultrasound probe is because you are getting the battery. So you're actually getting the power from inside the probe, because obviously there's no wire. Whereas with the Phillips Lumify, you're getting the battery from the tablet or the phone or whatever it is that you're plugged into. And we'll come on to that in a little bit more detail in a minute. They do have different options, as I've slightly alluded to already. So you can see that Lumify has 3 options. They do have a lower frequency convex or curvilinear probe. But if you're going to be buying a handheld machine, essentially you're only going to be buying 1 probe, because otherwise you have to buy a whole new machine. So you're basically pretty much doubling the cost of the machine, and we'll go on to that when we discuss cost in a minute. But essentially what you're after on the Lumify is the L12-4, and on the Clarius, the L15 is probably the most appropriate for musculoskeletal, but certainly the L7 is also appropriate for musculoskeletal. It does have a slightly lower frequency, and therefore you can scan to slightly deeper. But remember, when we're talking about 7 centimeters, 11 centimeters, we're not talking about getting an excellent image all the way down at that depth. And then they have recently brought out what we would consider a hockey stick probe, which is very high frequency, which if you're scanning lots of fingers or feet or anything like that, maybe for a rheumatologist, then this can be useful. But certainly this probe, the hockey stick probe, if you're only going to be buying 1 probe for MSK, you wouldn't go for a hockey stick probe. In terms of the connectivity, I think this is quite important, actually. You need to remember that these handheld machines have been designed to work off a tablet. Now, they do work off phones, but they are designed to work off a tablet. You can get them onto your Mac, or you can get them onto your Android, or onto a larger screen using Apple TV or a screen share option, or I can get the Clarius onto my Mac or the Lumify just using a Zoom, for example, and just plugging in to share the screen. So you can get it onto a bigger screen. And if this is going to be your only machine in clinic, as I've said previously in some of my blogs, I would advise that you do scan on quite a big tablet, and then maybe you even screen share that onto a TV on the wall or something like that. Now, it is important to remember that the Clarius is completely compatible with Apple and Android. So I generally have Apple products. I have a MacBook, I have a iPad, and I use an iPhone. So I'm generally what, people are generally Android or Apple, aren't they? Somewhere in between, but I'm an Apple person. So the Clarius was more attractive to me because that would be very easy for me to connect up to my existing devices. But you can use the Clarius on Android, whereas the Philips Lumify generally has always only been an Android product. Okay. Now I have heard some whispers that it is becoming Apple compatible, but I don't know. It does look like you can get an iOS app for the Lumify, but that's definitely, if you are an Apple person, you need to check that out, because certainly when I reviewed the Lumify, which is a few months ago now, it was only Android compatible. As I'll talk to in a minute, when you do buy a Lumify, you do get a tablet with it, whereas when you buy a Clarius, probably most people have either got an Apple or Android, and therefore you don't get a tablet with it. So just a few more features to talk about. So obviously they are both app-based. We've already said that the Clarius, which is on the left-hand side here, is Apple and Android, whereas Lumify is traditionally only been Android. However, they may be changing that. They're very much that point and shoot ultrasound machine. So if you're starting out in ultrasound, they're very much switch on and start scanning. Whereas obviously the portable and the cart-based machines, there's lots more buttons on them, and therefore they can be a little bit more daunting. But whereas these machines are very much designed, pop it on the patient and get started very quickly. Now, a few more technical elements. When you're doing musculoskeletal ultrasound, obviously what you're looking at is extremely small. So we need to make sure we've got a high frequency probe and that we have excellent spatial resolution. Now, that spatial resolution, i.e. the best image quality, is going to be where your focal zones are put in the image. Now, on portable and cart-based, you generally have the focus zones on the right hand side, which you can alter. With both of these machines, they're a bit more like a sonocyte machine, so actually your best image is always going to be in the middle of the image, and therefore you just have to adjust your depth appropriately to ensure that what you're trying to review anatomically and what you're trying to make a diagnosis from is in the middle of the image. And that's the same for both of them, and that's not a problem at all. That's something that I was used to using Sonocyte previously, and therefore it's quite straightforward. The other thing to bear in mind is that when you alter your depth, you are therefore altering your frequency. I have just done a blog on different probes and frequency and that sort of thing. So maybe have a look on our website at that if this isn't making any sense. But essentially, when you increase your frequency, you get a better image. When you the superficial elements, you get a better image. Whereas if you reduce your frequency, you can generally see slightly deeper structures better, but with maybe slightly poorer image resolution. So when you change the depth on the machine, that automatically changes the frequency. So you can't manually change the frequency like you can on a portable or cart-based machine. As somebody that's used to portable and cart-based machines, I like the option of being able to manually change the frequency away from just purely depth. But if you're new to ultrasound, then it does give you one less thing to think about. Now, if you're used to using a portable machine or a cart-based machine, you'll be very aware that there's a musculoskeletal preset, but also within that, you're going to have presets for shoulder, knee, ankle, etc., to try and optimize the image for those different joints. On the Lumify, they have obviously the musculoskeletal preset option, but they don't have the option to then preset per joint. And that is the same on the basic package for Clarius, but for £850, then you can get this thing called an advanced MSK package, which means that you can not just only have a musculoskeletal preset, but you can break down the presets per joint, which is personally what I would want to have. But if you're new to ultrasound, normally when you're new to ultrasound, you're just trying to get a machine to get started, I would suggest that the extra £850 is not worth it. You're going to get a good enough image quality, and I don't think the advanced MSK package is necessary. If you've got a spare £850, then obviously pop it on. They're both touchscreen. I'm generally not used to touchscreen. I've always been a bit concerned that the gel will get in the way of the touchscreen. Certainly with the Clarius, because you've got the probe buttons, it's less of an issue. But I did find that overall, both touchscreens were reasonably responsive, even with the odd bit of gel. The other advantage of the Clarius over the Lumify, and I think this is quite important, particularly from somebody that does lots of ultrasound guided injections, and I like to record my cine loops if I do an injection. Although I must say, I didn't perform any ultrasound guided injections using these portable machines. I did it on meat specimens, but I didn't do it on humans, so I don't really know from that point of view. But certainly when I'm teaching, if I see pathology, often pathology is quite long, particularly I see lots of Achilles, so I want to see the Achilles, the free tendon all the way up to the aponeurosis. So I do want a longer cine loop, so option to record video longer than 10 seconds. The Lumify is limited to 10 seconds, the Clarius is 30 seconds. So that is an advantage for me. Now, the battery life, this is quite important to get your head round, because on one hand, you've got the Clarius where the battery is within the probe, whereas the Lumify gets its battery life from the device, the tablet, the phone. So if you think about it with the Lumify, you do get a long battery life, 6 hours, which is really good. But obviously you can't charge the tablet and scan at the same time, because basically the scanner goes into the bit that you would insert the battery. On the other hand, you've got the Clarius. Now, I would suggest there's two things to mention here. One is I do know quite a few people that have brought 2 batteries, and I have suggested that in my blog on Clarius earlier in the year, which means that when one runs out, I think it costs about £350 extra for another battery. I think it's probably money well spent. You can just quickly change it over. The batteries last for about 60 minutes. And the key thing you've got to remember, and I just kept noticing that the battery just kept running out really quickly. I'd put it down, see another patient, not use it for 30 minutes. I go back, or 45 minutes, and the battery will be dead. And the reason being is that you have to freeze, or you have to press one of the buttons on the Clarius to basically switch it off and put it into low power, to put it into the power save side of things. So that means that you will actually keep more of your battery. The important thing is not to put it down and forget about it, because that battery is still being used. And then you pick it back up and it will be dead, the battery. So you need to make sure that when we talk about 45 to 60 minutes, we mean continuous scanning. So as long as you remember to switch it off into power save mode between, then you're not going to have so much of a problem with that. Now, we always say image quality is the most important thing. Diagnostic ultrasound is very reliant on 2 things. One is the quality of the machine, i.e. the image quality, and the second is the operator's skill. Both very, very important. Obviously, operator skill is probably more important. However, you need a good machine with good image quality. Now, when I first reviewed handheld machines a good few years ago, I was very unimpressed with the image quality. However, you can see here, this is the Clarius on the left, and you can see the Lumify on the right, and both are giving me a nice image of supraspinatus. Now, when we talk about a good image or good image quality, we are comparing here the Clarius with the Lumify. I'm not comparing this to a Canon. I'm not comparing this to a Logic E from GE. I'm not comparing this to a Minolta. A lot of these machines that definitely have better image quality than these handheld machines. However, you've got to remember, in ultrasound, you pay for what you get for what you pay for. You get what you pay for. So remember, these machines are around the £5,000. We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. So this is going to give you a really good image quality for £5,000. But in my opinion, it is never going to be as good as most 15 to 20 to £25,000 machines. And to be fair to these machines, they're not necessarily trying to do that. They are trying to give you the best image quality you can within these devices. On the left-hand side, we've got the Clarius. I would probably describe this as a slightly smoother image. I do think the first few centimeters give you better spatial resolution than Lumify. The Lumify is a bit grainier. So personally, I prefer the Clarius image, but it is a personal thing. And in ultrasound, it's very hard to get exactly two images set up exactly the same, so you can do a direct comparison. But personally, I prefer the smoothness of the Clarius. I think this is a bit grainier. I'd suggest there's more shades of grey in this. So for me, and it is a personal thing, I preferred the Clarius image quality. Do I think the image quality is much better on the Clarius than Lumify? No, I don't. And I don't think if you're making your decision purely on image quality, you would, sorry, if you are making your decision purely on image quality, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these two. But personally, I prefer the Clarius. In the blogs that I've done on our website, I've actually tried to scan all the same areas on each machine. And again, you can't always do a direct comparison, but they do give you a little bit more idea. And again, I must say overall, both machines do give you some nice fine anatomical detail. You can see the fascicles within the tendon here, which is really nice. And really, it's up to you to make your own mind up. I just personally preferred the Clarius. Now, when it comes to storage, image management or file management, I'm not sure exactly what phrase everybody would use for that. This isn't necessarily something that you think about at the time, but hopefully as I show you some of the options, particularly on the Clarius, you may start to think actually that could be quite useful. So let's start first of all with the Lumify. The Lumify, you store your images and you can export your images using email, or if you're set up to a DiCompact system or a local network, you can set that up to get the images off your machine. The easiest way by far on the Lumify, which you can also do on the Clarius, but you can do much more on the Clarius, is you can email the scans. You are limited by your email provider, and it may be that if you want to send 7 or 8 scans, you may need to do it in separate emails, which can obviously be a little bit annoying. So that's the options on the Lumify. The Clarius, however, has many more options, and I think this is probably the best thing about the Clarius, is what's called Clarius Cloud. Now, not only is this good for a handheld machine, this is the way I wish every machine would go. So I wish every portable, laptop-based, cart-based had this inbuilt cloud system. So essentially what that means is you scan your patient, you freeze and save, you go home. You then go onto your Clarius Cloud, which is, so on my MacBook, which I'll show you in a minute. In fact, I'll show you now. All you have to do is go onto your Clarius Cloud, which I've opened up here. So you can see I've got my logo up there and then all of these images that I did earlier on in the year. So if I just choose one of these, let's choose the shoulder. So all of the images that I've saved straight away, I've got. So I don't even need to have my machine. I can go on, I can look at videos, I can look at stills. You can see all of them as a thumbnail. You can share to Clarius. You could add a reviewer, which is quite useful. So I can share this with, say, my clinical supervisor if I was doing a postgraduate certificate or mentorship program. You can also write the report. So you can just, no long-headed biceps, you can write your indications, your findings, and straight away you've got your images. So there's lots of nice usability here. You can edit the images, you can then export the images, or what's really nice is straight away, if you wanted to send the patient their scans and their report, you'd basically just save it as a PDF and off it goes. Or if you wanted to send it to your referrers, and this is really, really nice. The other thing that's really nice is if, for example, you are doing a postgraduate certificate or something like that, then, obviously many of you know you have to do it, or even if you're just trying to put a logbook together to prove your competency, then you may have to do 100 supervised, 150 unsupervised scans, and you can literally have them all here. So you've got all of your exams where you want them. You can annotate, you can measure, you can send your reports off. And that's really, really good. Just the idea of being able to send your patients your reports straight away, send your referrers your images as well, which looks great for those referrers that have sent you for a scan. And also if you're doing some sort of logbook, then you can share with your supervisor, they can make comments. So this is excellent. This is really good. And as I said, this is not just good for a handheld machine. Hopefully, because I don't know of any other laptop machine or cart-based machine that has this cloud system. And hopefully this is something that many of them will follow. So that's a really interesting area and a really nice way of sharing your scans. Both of these machines have options for remote teaching, for telemedicine. Now, this isn't, I actually thought I might use this a little bit more, but this isn't something I've used that much. So with the Phillips Lumify, you use what's called a React system, whereas with Clarius, they have something called Clarius Live. React is actually a secondary company. Clarius Live is just built within Clarius. What I find much easier when I've done some remote teaching is I just use Zoom and I just plug my tablet or my phone into my Zoom and I just screen share, a bit like what I'm doing now. So although this looks very good, I'm not sure the use of it is that important. And you can see on the left here, this is me and Jeff. Jeff owns a Lumify. He's somebody that's been through our SMUG programs. And we're just sharing, and he's annotating. And so really nice usability. Same with this. The only difference with the Clarius is you've got the tilt of the probe. So it actually moves as you move, which is quite nice. So you get some nice images. Both of them, when I was using them, dropped out. So you do have to have very, very good Wi-Fi for both of these options. And so again, for me, it would be much easier just to do it through Zoom. A couple of other features. Elastography. You can add that to your Clarius. You can't add that to Lumify. Again, these are what they would call these additional options. If you're new to ultrasound, unless you're carrying out specific research using elastography, this is not worth having, in my opinion. I think we're very much in the research phase of that. But if you're somebody that just wants to learn how to scan, you don't need elastography. Needle visualization, as I said, I didn't use these for carrying out injections on patients. I did it on meat specimens. For me, why would I use a handheld when I've got a GE Logic or an Alpinion or something better with better image quality that I can use? I wouldn't suggest that it's worth getting needle visualization. Generally speaking, when you're first starting to do guided injections, you may use the needle visualization a little bit, but anybody that gets more experience probably stops using it. So I wouldn't suggest that you need any of these really. I do want to mention color and power Doppler. So you can see the Clarius is the only one that has power Doppler. So really trying to pick up that small, slow flow, which can be really useful. One, if you're a rheumatologist or somebody that often is looking for synovitis and looking for hyperemia within the synovium. Or if you deal a lot with tendons. I see a lot of Achilles, a lot of tennis elbow. So I'm very interested in whether there's any neovascularization within or outside the tendon. So for me, the Clarius having the power Doppler is a real advantage. Both have good color Doppler, but the Lumify only has a fast flow, slow flow option, whereas the color Doppler is fully adjustable on the Clarius just by using the gain, just like you would on a laptop or cart-based machine. Pulse wave Doppler, you don't need that for musculoskeletal if that's what you're doing. Obviously, you may need it if you're looking at looking at for vascular issues or something like that. And as I've already alluded to, the advanced musculoskeletal software, it's all to do with the presets. So they both come with musculoskeletal presets, whereas the advanced MSK software on the Clarius will allow you to preset per joint, whereas the standard package doesn't allow you to do that. So what does it cost? Well, the Lumify is about 5,000 plus VAT. If you want 2 probes, And this is why I was saying at the beginning, if you're going to want 2 probes, you're probably just better off buying more of a laptop-based machine with 2 probes, because essentially they're not far off doubling the price. With that, you get a very long warranty, which is great. You also get an Android device, so you can start scanning straight away if you don't have a tablet. And then you get this Reacts license. You get 12 months free and then £65 per year after. I would suspect most people don't actually end up using Lumify Reacts too much. Same as Clarius Live, although it is free, I don't think you end up using it too much. The Clarius is cheaper, it's 4,000, so it's £1,000 cheaper plus VAT. And certainly the guys that I know that have bought a Clarius, particularly those that are on our mentorship program or are new to musculoskeletal ultrasound, they do some good lease purchase options. I don't know about the Lumify lease purchase options. I'm sure there's something, but £132 plus VAT per month for 36 months. So I would suggest it does make it quite affordable if you don't want that money up front. The Clarius gets a 3-year warranty, and if you don't like it, you can just basically give it back. I don't know how long after, but they will give you a full money back guarantee. And then I've talked about it quite a bit, but this unlimited cloud storage is excellent, and it really is unlimited. It doesn't cost any extra money, and you get all that nice usability over the file and image management. So in conclusion, obviously I spent quite a lot of time reviewing these handheld machines, and one of the reasons was because I wanted to buy one. So what I've ended up with is the L15 Clarius version 2, which you can see here, and I've been very happy with it. So I just want to quickly run through my main reasons for buying it. My first thing to talk about is I didn't buy this because I wanted to use this every day in my clinic. I have a GE Logic, got 2 or 3. We also have a Sonosite M Turbo, which still does the job. And we also have a Alpinion iCube 7, I believe it is. And those machines are what I use in clinic. This was never, ever going to replace any of those machines. And also, because I do lots of ultrasound guided injections, I am going to continue using those machines. The reason I was after a handheld machine is because I think they're really quite cool. I do lots of teaching, and I thought this, particularly the Clarius Cloud, would be really useful for supervising students, sharing scans, and also demonstrating, or if I had an interesting scan, I could send it to some of our delegates. So that cloud option was a massive advantage for me over the Lumify. In terms of the portability, if I'm doing some remote teaching, all I have to do is come home with my probe. I can hook it up onto my tablet, onto my laptop via Zoom, and I can teach. So I'm teaching a group of podiatrists from Singapore at the moment quite regularly. So this allows me to share my screen and do some demonstrations with them. The Clarius Live, I thought, was also going to be quite a big advantage, but I did have a few issues with the Wi-Fi, which I had exactly the same for the Lumify. And actually, in the end, you don't need the Clarius Live. You can just do it through a screen sharing option like you can on Zoom, like I'm doing at the moment. In terms of image quality, I just preferred the Clarius to the Lumify. I don't think overall there was a massive difference, but that was just a personal preference. So hopefully you found this useful. Have a look at our website, ultrasoundtraining.co.uk. It's where we've got all of our courses here in the UK. And also, if you're on Facebook, we have a closed Facebook group with around 800 people on it now called the SMUG Ultrasound Forum, and lots of people post different scans. It's a really nice discussion, peer support, and lots of people post articles and that sort of thing. So if you just request to join that, then I'll accept your request. And that will be a nice forum for you to get more information about ultrasound and ask other people questions as well. If you've got any specific questions, then please just drop us an email, but hopefully you found this reasonably interesting. And Happy New Year to everybody.